Talk Boxing News.
Okay, we'll start with this. Reigning WBA bantamweight champion Nina Hughes reacted to the news of the Thorsland versus Luna unification match set to go down in September. She reacted by saying, "This is great news. All that needs to happen now is me and Ebony Bridges need to fight, and it will be two semifinals. Winners fight each other for undisputed. Come on, Ebony Bridges. Let's make this happen before the end of the year." And I think that it can happen. I think that it will, though before it does, Ebony's going to need a tune-up fight.
Remember, she's coming off of hand surgery.
I think a week or so ago I heard Ebony Bridges make some mention of facing her countrywoman, Avril Matthey, fellow Aussie that's based out of Miami.
Those Australians do love to travel, you know. Ebony, she's based out of the United Kingdom. Avril Matthey, she's based out of the United States. Avril is coming off the decision loss to Ramla Ali up there at Super Bantamweight.
Though she herself usually campaigns just south of Super Bantamweight at Bantamweight. Ebony expressed some interest in facing her. I remember that. Ebony Bridges, who earlier today announced some news.
She split from Mark Tibbs.
I'm very excited to announce I'll be joining David Caldwell's stable up north. He has a great resume of boxers, past and present, and I'm really looking forward to learning and growing even more as a fighter. The north is where my heart is, so I'm very excited to be relocating.
That adds a bit of spice to things.
We don't know all the particulars here and now, though I'm going to assume that because this is all based on proximity and Ebony relocating further north, that the split between her and Mark Tibbs, who made a great team.
It's an amicable split.
Kind of like Lawrence Okolie's split from Shane McGuigan, which was also based on proximity. It had more to do with where Lawrence would be based out of moving forward than any hard feelings or anything like that. I'm going to assume that that might be the case here. Really don't know. But she's going to be training under David Caldwell now. And anytime that a fighter enlists the aid of a new trainer,
it's experimental. It's a transitional phase. You got to keep an eye out.
Ahead of what could be a major unification match, arguably the biggest fight of Ebony Bridges' career later on this year. Before it comes to that, she'll have a tune-up fight, a keep busy fight, a tick-over.
We have to see how she looks under David Caldwell and how that differs from how she looked with Mark Tibbs in the corner.
Based on what we know, based on what we've seen from Ebony Bridges already, as compared to Nina Hughes, I'd wager that Ebony Bridges is a somewhat bigger puncher than Nina Hughes is.
Yeah, I think Ebony's got more power. Punch for punch, I think Ebony's a stronger puncher than Nina Hughes, but that's not saying that Nina can't punch. Yeah, Nina can punch.
They're both close quarters fighters, mid-range to inside pressure fighters with a mean streak. They're both aggressive. It's what they're good at.
Ebony is some years younger than Nina Hughes. Nina Hughes, in turn, is a little faster. Her punches do seem a little snappier than Ebony's.
Albeit a little wider, whereas Ebony's punches, Ebony's shots, they are short punches, very short punches, short double jabs and uppercuts up the middle, hooks around the guard, very tight.
Body shots.
Ebony Bridges seems the more compact and tighter puncher of the two within close quarters with the heavier hands.
Nina's got better feet, though.
For me and my money, Nina Hughes seems to have the better footwork and better balance of the two fighters. Better balance than Ebony Bridges.
Fighting out of a wide stance, making herself a very small target, small, tricky, and hard to hit.
Oftentimes getting fighters that are a little bit taller than she is, more statuesque, to give up their height, trying to land punches as they have to punch down to hit her, because she makes herself such a small target, which allows her to bring over overhand rights and looping punches, so on and so forth. Her and Ebony are both.
They have that in common. They both do that. They're both petite. They're very small super bantamweights.
Will create an interesting situation, them being eye level to each other, where most of the time they're the shorter, stumpier fighters in the fight.
Won't be the case when they share the ring with each other.
I want to say that defensively, Nina Hughes more often than not uses angles while coming forward. Angles to keep her head off center and out of harm's way, whereas Ebony Bridges, she does a bit more catching and shooting out of a high guard.
Very tight.
Blocking and parrying punches whilst coming forward, catching and shooting, catching and countering.
Ebony is more catch and shoot, whereas Nina Hughes is more slip and hook.
So it looks, they can both do a bit of both, though when you watch them in action, more often than not, you'll see Ebony Bridges catching and shooting, and you'll see Nina Hughes slipping and hooking.
It's more prone to using angles than covering up.
Trial for Ebony Bridges opposite the ring. Nina Hughes is working around that speed. Nina does seem to have some sharpness, some quickness in those hands straight stringing together combinations.
Ebony's got to work around that.
In turn, the trial for Nina Hughes is taking the power, being able to take the power shots mid-range to inside from Ebony Bridges, who for me and my money seems the heavier-handed fighter of the two. Ebony's got power, Nina's got speed.
The good engine.
Of the two, I think Nina Hughes has got better cardio. She's less likely to tire than Ebony Bridges. More than once, I have seen Ebony Bridges gas out, punch herself out.
It's a 50-50 fight. It's a pick'em fight.
If it's anything, it's that. Both fighters have their own unique qualities, characteristics working for them. I very much like the double jab of Ebony Bridges, which would be very important in this fight.
Looking forward to seeing it later on this year.
Everybody got counterpunching. I mean, Danny Garcia the best counterpuncher in the world. I mean, he got highlight reel knockout counterpunching, ability, especially with his left foot. And, I cancel that out, so I'm not too much worried about it.
Was Errol Spence Jr.'s response to how he plans on dealing with Terence Crawford's countering ability. He likens it to Danny Garcia and how he was able to neutralize Danny Garcia. What he's leaving out is that Danny ain't got movement like Terence Crawford.
He ain't got feet like Terence.
He can counter. He's a good counter puncher, but he's flat-footed, drawing his power from the ground up to optimize power and the damage that the punch does to an oncoming opponent. The emphasis is it's an oncoming opponent. The Danny's countering ability relies on the principle that the man opposite the ring is coming forward.
He's not as fast as Terence Crawford, not as sharp, and not as mobile. He's a good counterpuncher, but he's limited.
Not as athletic as Terence, not as nuanced. He's not a switch hitter like Terence Crawford is a switch hitter who can fight out of both the orthodox and southpaw stances, in effect creating different angles of attack.
Terence Crawford might go out there, fight you as an orthodox fighter for 6 or 7 rounds, then suddenly switch.
After you've been conditioned to defend against attacks from the orthodox stance, now you're fighting a southpaw.
And vice versa. He can start off as a southpaw, then switch over to the orthodox stance.
I wouldn't liken Danny Garcia's counterpunching to Terence Crawford's because Danny's a little bit too reliant on counterpunching. That's why he's always second best.
Yes.
Second best in the exchange,
Yes.
second best in the round, second best in the fight. He's essentially letting the other guy lead the dance while waiting to get off a big counter shot.
He's limited to that.
Terence isn't. Terence is not limited to waiting for a big opportunity. If one doesn't come, he'll go out there and he'll create one.
It's the physicality of the fighters you have to address as well. That Danny is not as athletic, not as fast, not as sharp as Terence Crawford. So even though he's a good counterpuncher, he can be overwhelmed, and he was, by Errol Spence Jr.'s volume punching.
Too many punches that are coming in too fast and too high of an abundance for him to respond in kind, respond adequately.
You know, Errol Spence continued saying, "You ain't fought nobody." Sean Porter said he didn't train like he should.
Splitting hairs over the fact that Terence Crawford was able to stop Sean Porter and Errol Spence Jr. wasn't. In spite of Errol landing more punches on Sean, he didn't stop him.
Terence did.
I'm not gonna lie, Top Rank's got the best matchmakers in the business, Spence said in reference to Terence Crawford's promoter. You ain't fought nobody, man. You haven't beaten anybody. Undisputed at 140, who'd you fight at 135? And who'd you fight at 147? Even when you fought Sean Porter, even Sean Porter said he did not train like he should. He didn't do the things that his daddy told him to do.
Addressing Errol's criticism of Terence Crawford at 135, Terence fought the number 1 and number 2 guys at that weight and beat them both.
20 years ago, at that time, it was Ray Beltran and Ricky Burns who went on to become champions again after Terence Crawford beat them. So they weren't washed up fighters. They weren't over the hill when Terence fought them.
Just stating the facts.
Not to mention Yuriorkis Gamboa, a then unbeaten Yuriorkis Gamboa, who was a much better version of himself then than he is now.
Try and understand, the same guys that give Gervonta Davis all this credit for beating guys like Gamboa, those are the same guys that are critical of Terence Crawford. But Crawford beat Gamboa years before Gervonta Davis and better.
He was a younger, fresher, unbeaten fighter as opposed to the one-legged husk of his former self that he was the night he fought Gervonta Davis.
That's who Terence fought at 135.
Terence, who responded to Errol Spence Jr.'s critique of his fight with Sean Porter by saying, "What did I do to Sean Porter that you couldn't do?" Crawford asked.
Spence continued to cite what Porter's father and trainer Kenny Porter stated after his son's loss to Crawford. "What are you talking about?" Spence said. "Even his daddy said it."
Said what? Bunch of excuses?
I'd say about 2 years before they actually fought. My forecast, my prediction was that Terrence Crawford would be the only man that stops Sean Porter. That Errol, he couldn't do it. He couldn't stop Mikey. It's not going to stop Sean, but Terrence.
Not only would Terrence Crawford stop Sean Porter, but his critics, Errol Spence Jr. among them, they wouldn't give him credit for it. Lo and behold, time has proven me right. Even Kell Brook, he was already broken, Spence said. What are you talking about?
Terrence Crawford stopped Brook in the 4th round of their November 2020 bout at the MGM Grand Conference Center in Las Vegas.
Errol was saying that the Kell Brook that Terrence Crawford fought was already a broken man, a broken fighter, though in truth, I think he was a broken fighter.
He was a broken fighter in both fights.
Errol conveniently leaves out that before he shared the ring with him, Kell Brook shared the ring with Gennady Golovkin, who destroyed Kell Brook and thereby altered the trajectory of his career moving forward. When Kell fought Errol,
he was coming off a loss, a fractured orbital bone, and a massive weight cut. Having fought up there at middleweight, he had to drop all the way back down to welterweight.
No, he wasn't broken, Spence said of Brook. I broke the other eye. I broke the other eye. Yeah, that's how it got broke. That's how it got broke.
In effect, acknowledging that Kell Brook was coming off a 5-round shellacking to one of the biggest punchers in the sport at that time.
Gennady Golovkin. It is true that the Kell Brook that Terrence Crawford fought was a shell of his former self, but the same applies to the Kell Brook that Errol Spence fought. He was a broken fighter in both fights.
What does it matter, Spence asked. What does it matter? No, he wasn't broken.
Yes, he was.
The guy went up there to middleweight and got the shit beat out of him by one of the biggest punchers in the sport. He got his face broke.
You're gonna act like that doesn't matter? You're gonna act like that weight drop, that big cut, you're gonna act like that doesn't matter? That one fight was fought up there at middleweight, and the other was fought all the way down there at welterweight.
That doesn't matter.
I had the same surgery that Brook had, and what happened, Spence said. So, what that say about you then? You fight me then, so what's that say? So I'm broken then, right?
I think he is. I think that's why he doesn't fight that often.
I enjoy the back and forth between the two fighters, the banter. I enjoy all of it. It adds to the spice, but I've long maintained that a part of the reason Errol doesn't fight as often as he used to is because of the injuries he suffered in that car accident. That he may be 2 years younger than Terrence Crawford, but he's actually got more wear and tear.
It took him over a year to come back after the car accident.
After he came back in late 2020, he ended up sitting out all of 2021 due to a detached retina.
Sounds like wear and tear to me.
You're gonna be broken July 29th, Crawford replied. You're going to be broken on July 29th.
Car accident, wear and tear aside, before any of that actually happened, I already picked Terrence Crawford to beat Errol Spence Jr. just based on the styles.
Everything after the Sean Porter fight, the car accident, the detached retina, it all lends itself to what I already thought, that Terrence Crawford is going to win. And if you disagree, feel free to.
It's your prerogative. It's a free country.
I'm not selling it to you. I'm just giving it to you straight.
Straight.
Because it's the only way I know how to give it to you.
I already had Terrence beating Errol before the car accident.
Don't forget the rehydration clause he likes to do on guys.
That's a pussy move.
I know, I agree. So,
Tank, hold up. Javante, you a fucking pussy. You are a bitch. I don't care what anybody says. You can be all that rah-rah thug life and scream and jock your head on Chief Keith Sosa. Man, with your dick-sucking lips. Get out of here.
would you?
Was Teofimo Lopez, who was in attendance for today's press conference in reference to the fight we just talked about, the Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. fight. And as you heard, he had some choice words for Gervonta Davis and his usage of a rehydration clause in the Ryan Garcia fight. A catch weight on top of a rehydration clause.
I've not often seen it done that way.
To where a fighter has both weight stipulations in play, you often hear Canelo Alvarez criticized for a perceived weight stipulation in the Kovalev fight. That wasn't fought at a catch weight.
There was no catch weight in that fight, but some say, that there was a rehydration clause.
Canelo Alvarez gets a lot of heat, gets a lot of criticism for that from the same people that are okay with Gervonta catch weighting and rehydration clausing Ryan Garcia. A brazen double standard.
Don't get it twisted. Ryan Garcia was not to Gervonta Davis in that fight what Sergey Kovalev was to Canelo Alvarez. Sergey was a reigning champion after all, and a career light heavyweight.
Whereas Ryan was a lightweight moving up accept a super lightweight the same as Gervonta Davis. What do you need all these weight stipulations for a greenhorn for?
For a guy like Ryan.
Ryan Garcia, who Teofimo Lopez reveals, messaged him this week to try to set up a fight between them. Ryan DM'd me and everything. Bro's desperate for a payday. He DM'd me after the Tosh Jailer fight. I deleted it.
I remember Ryan saying that he would like to fight Teofimo Lopez.
I don't think it happens, though. I don't think it materializes, at least not in the immediate future, not in the next 1 or 2 fights. Maybe somewhere down the line, down the pipeline, though not straight away.
No.
Not right now.
Gervonta Davis is a coward.
Fucking coward. And I don't often agree with everything that Teofimo Lopez says, but I agree with him on that.
He's a pussy.
This day and age, if you don't agree with everything a fighter says verbatim, you're accused of being a hater. No, I don't consider Teofimo Lopez a 2-time undisputed champion or even a 1-time undisputed champion, but that doesn't mean I can't acknowledge that he is an accomplished fighter. More accomplished, in my eyes, by and large, than Gervonta Davis.
Gervonta Davis is a coward.
Teofimo Lopez is, in all actuality, what Gervonta pretends to be. Before it became about Lopez versus Lomachenko, it was about Gervonta Davis versus Lomachenko. But look at who ended up fighting him, and look at who ended up beating him.
Not Gervonta Davis.
He's a piece of fucking shit. Piece of fucking shit that went up to 140 for a baby belt, a regular title against a no-name in Mario Barrios. But he had no time for Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor, who Teofimo Lopez just beat, and beat him decisively.
Gervonta Davis would never.
Don't even start up with the who do you think would win the fight stuff, that you'd pick Gervonta over Teo, or you'd pick Teo over Gervonta, because the bottom line is Gervonta's too much of a fucking coward to fight somebody like Teofimo Lopez, let alone in his prime.
Here and now, this is going to play out the same way it played out at 135. After Lopez beat Vasyl Lomachenko, what effort did Gervonta make to fight him?
None. He made no effort. He never sent him an offer. He never did anything. And here at 140 in 2023, now that Lopez is WBO champion, it'll be the same thing.
Gervonta's not going to make him an offer.
He's going to wait for Devin to vacate all his titles at 135 so that he can be elevated to full WBA champion, and he's going to stay down there, maybe have a rematch with Isaac Cruz.
He's a fucking coward.
Congratulations, you beat Ryan Garcia, who nobody thought was the best lightweight in the world or the best super lightweight in the world.
Have they made Devin an offer yet? Or Shakur? Or Teofimo?
You know they haven't, and in all likelihood, they're not going to, though by all means, if Team Davis want to surprise me, surprise me!
You're supposed to be the A-side at these weights, aren't you? You call the shots. Make the guy an offer.
I'll bet you that he doesn't, because he's a fucking coward.
Fucking piece of shit.